Hi everyone! In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to create instructions for the board game that you designed. Now to do so, I'm going to use my daughter Maddie's example from when she created her board game on The Outsiders, a novel that she read in high school. So now let's take a look at some key characteristics of board game instructions. Okay, so you'll notice at the very top of the instruction sheet, there is the title of the game. It's called The Outsiders Character Game. So making sure you have the title of your game at the top of your instructions is essential. Okay, then it asks for the number of players. Anybody who picks up your game has to know how many people can play. So for this game, 2 to 8 players can play. You'll notice that there's a dash between the numbers. That shows that anybody between 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8 people can play. Okay, 2 to 8 players. Now let's talk about what it means, objective of the game. What that means is that when somebody picks up your game and opens it up and plays it, what is it that they want to accomplish by the end of the game? What is the purpose? What is the goal of this game? Now, in the Outsiders character game, the objective was to correctly answer as many character cards as you can. The player with the most points at the end of the game wins. Okay, so you have to be very specific in your objective for your game. What do people have to do as they play the game in order to win? All right, everybody's game is going to be a little bit different. You may not have cards like this game has. Let's take a look at the next section called materials. Now, materials are going to include all the things that you use to play the game, not what you use to build the game. It includes all the things you use to play the game. So when somebody plays the Outsiders character game, they will have to use 2 dice, 8 character pieces, 10 outsider cards that are gray, 70 character question cards, and a game board. So you have to list all the things that somebody playing your game will have to use to play it. That way, if somebody opens up your game and they can't find their question cards, for example, then they know they're going to have difficulty playing the game. They have to make sure they have all the pieces. All right, now the next part is called game setup. This takes place before they play the game. Okay, what do people have to do before they play the game? So first of all, you have to choose a player. So choose your player token. So you have to explain that to your players. Choose a player and place it on the word start, for example. You may not have a start on your board. This game had a start. Put the 10 gray outsider cards on the game board. So they had a special place for the gray cards. And they had to sort the character cards into piles based on color. So there was some organization that had to take place before the game could be played. And that people aren't even rolling dice yet. This is just before the game starts. That's called the game setup. You have to do that as well. Now the next section is just called rules. What rules do the people playing your game have to follow in order to successfully play the game? So you have to think this through very carefully, and that's why I had you take notes on Wednesday as you were testing your game so that you could remember all the different things that people have to do as they play. Okay, so let's talk about the first one. It says the first player rolls the 2 dice and moves his or her character to a colored spot. So they moved around the board. He or she then picks up the corresponding colored card. So if they land on a red square, they had to pick up a red character card. Okay? Players must answer a question based on a character from the story. Do you see how my daughter Maddie went through every step that somebody would have to do in order to play? So the players must answer a question based on a character from the story. Now, she also included what all the color coding cards meant and what characters they went with. So there's a character named Ponyboy in this movie. All the orange cards were related to him. So she included all that special information that people will need to know to play her game. So when they're answering the orange colored card, they know it has something to do with a character named Ponyboy. All right? It says each character card has a number on it that states how many points the card is worth. So different cards were worth different points. If it was a harder question, it was probably worth more points. If it was an easy question, probably worth less points. All right? Then she goes on to explain that if a player answers the card correctly, he or she gets to keep the card. If the player answers it incorrectly, he or she must put the card back to the bottom of the appropriate pile. If someone lands on a gray space, he or she must pick up a gray outsider card from the game board. The player must do exactly what the card tells them to do. So that's all the instructions for how to play the game. Now, the last part is the end of the game. People always want to know, how can I win the game? So in this part, it's all players must finish the game and are active in the game until all players reach end. Once all players have completed the game, players must add up the total number of points that they have earned. Now remember, they earned it through the cards. Whoever has the highest number wins the game. So this is how you design instructions. And I have created a sheet for those of you that are in class. Those of you that are in class will have this. I can also post it to Seesaw so that you can see it. However, you will not be able to write on it in Seesaw. You will just be able to look at the layout. All right? And I can post this on the website, a picture of this as well. You, if you are at home and not coming into class, may have to just write it out so that you have all these different sections. You can pause the video so that you can see the different sections you have to write on your own piece of paper. Okay, so now I'm going to give you an example of how you can create something like this. Now let's say that I created a game called Multiplication Madness. So I would write the title of my game here, being very careful to put a capital at the beginning of each word. So Multiplication Madness. Okay, so there's my title, capital and capital. All right, number of players. Well, I have to decide, how did I design my game? So I'm going to imagine that 2 to 4 players can play this game. All right, now I have to think, what was the objective of my game? Okay, players must answer questions correctly, answer math questions correctly as they move around the board. Okay, do you see what I'm doing here? I'm saying, what's the purpose of this game? They must answer math questions correctly as they move along the board. The first player to reach the end wins. So I added the detail about having to answer math questions correctly for them to be able to move to the end. All right, now I'm going to list my materials. So I have my board game. I have perhaps dice. Maybe I have 25 math questions, math cards. And maybe I have 4 player tokens. Okay, do I have to use all the lines? No, you don't. Okay, I just included those on there in case you need them. Now for game setup, you have to decide what needs to be done again before the game is played. So maybe you will decide on which player token you will use. And place it on start. And maybe there's a spot for the math cards. Place math cards on the board. Okay, so this is just the setup of the game. And it's important for people to know what they need to do in order to play. Now, as for the rules, you're going to go. Now, it's going to be very detailed, this section. So my suggestion to you is to use numbers. What is the first thing that the player is going to do? So number 1, okay? So maybe you'll say the person who is youngest gets to start, okay? Maybe you want to put that in there. It's up to you. Maybe it's the oldest. The person who is youngest can start. How about we say instead of start, can roll the dice. The person, you can even say player, moves the number of spaces that are on the dice. Okay. Now the next job is to say, okay, once the person lands on a space, what are they going to do next? So maybe I have color-coded spaces. So say if they land on a red space, they have to pick from the red pile. Or if they land on a blue space, they have to pick on a blue space. Every game is going to be different. I'm not going to go through every single instruction of a game because I haven't created a game named Multiplication Madness. That's something that I would have had to design. But I just wanted to show you an example of how you can start. Okay, then you are going to go step by step, and I give you lots of space if you're working in class, and at home you can take as much space as you need. Number it all the way down to the very last thing, the very last rule they need to know to play. I want you to make sure you describe if there's any special spaces on your board, like maybe there's a special star square. Well, what happens if they land on that square? You have to be able to explain what all your special spaces mean. If you have spaces that say move back 3, then make sure you indicate to your players in your list of rules that if they land on one of the move back 3 spaces, that they have to count 3 back. Okay, so explain all your special spaces here. Now, end of the game. You want to say that the game ends. How? The game ends when one player reaches the end first. Now you have to decide, do the other players have to finish to find out who gets second, third, and fourth place, or does the game just end at this point? There's a whole bunch of things that can happen at the end. I don't know your games. You have to decide how the game ends, okay? So, to recap, you have to write the title at the top of your instructions. You have to say the number of players. You have to say the objective. The objective means the purpose of the game. Okay, what do people have to accomplish, or what is the goal as they're playing this game? Are we answering math questions correctly as we move along a board? Are we having to collect the most number of cards in order to win? You know, do we get points for landing on certain spaces? So is it the most number of points wins at the end? You have to state the objective of the game. Materials, please list them all. If you need lots of spaces, then go ahead and write them over here. At home, you can take as much space as you need. You can even type it in a computer if you have parent assistance. Game setup, these are the things that your players will do before they start playing. Rules are all the instructions that your players need to follow in order to successfully play your game. Don't just say roll the dice, move the number of spaces. If there's special spaces on your board and people don't know what to do on them, they're not going to be able to play the game. You must be very specific. Okay, and then at the end, you have to say, how does the game end? Does it end when everybody gets to the end, or when just the first player reaches the end? Okay, everybody, so that's how we're going to do it. Once again, if you are in class on Thursday, I am giving you this sheet that you will be writing your instructions on. If you are not in class on Thursday, I will post this to Seesaw so that you can see all the different sections that you will have to create. You will not be able to fill it in on Seesaw, however, because I think that might be too much information to type into that application. Okay, you'll have to write it on paper or work with a parent to type it out onto a computer. I can also email this sheet to all of your parents, but only some of you have printers. So that might work for some of you, but it might not work for others. So either way, your instructions must include all these special headings. All right, everybody? So there you go. That's how you write instructions for a board game. Have fun.